Mark Bluett. I'm the Master Luthier here at Bluett Bros Violins at 122 Hill Street in York, Pennsylvania. I've been in this building for 15 years now. Actually, we're going to own the building this year, which is a great thing. But I've been in York since 1984. When I was 12 years old, I tried to make my first guitar and got very frustrated. Ended up throwing it in my mother's fireplace, and it almost burnt the house down. But it wasn't until I became a professional musician playing out that I heard of the opportunity to study under a guy named Bluett Bros down in DC. Unfortunately, I only had a year with him. He was 89 years old, and he just couldn't do it anymore. But I caught the bug from there, and I've been doing it ever since. So. I believe it's around 1,600 instruments that I've made up to date. That's going back to, I worked for an electric guitar making company for a little while, and then, but I'm more of an acoustic person, so I just started making anything with strings. Well, there are a lot of things that go along in making instruments. First it's a lot of math and things like that, but it is a lot of artistic, thought and accomplishing when making something that's very useful that will last for hundreds of years, hopefully, if you take care of it, and it fulfills both of those things. Hide glue is a tendril glue. It reaches into the wood and pulls the wood together. So when you have an old violin that used the hide glue, some of the Amatis, the Guarneriuses, the Stradivariuses you hear so much about, if there's a crack in the wood or it's been abused of some, you find it in somebody's attic or something like that, you take the top off. It's just a matter of taking a knife and working it around, and you can fix the instrument as long as you fix it properly, and then you could glue it right back together. And that's why all those instruments have lasted 300 or more years, because it's all in the glue that they use. It's one of the few instruments that are made to be repaired, and there's nothing on a violin that you can't repair. I teach my apprentices this too. Is every time they pick up a piece of wood, tap it with your finger, hold it like this, and hear how it sounds. Because there are different tones, and once you get used to hearing a certain tone, you're like, that's it. With each one you make, you learn things and learn to be consistent with things. So when someone orders a violin and have heard one of my instruments before, they're fairly consistent in the tone and quality of the workmanship. I just had a 1692 Stainer violin in here, and that kind of makes you, feel good to restore something back that someone did a great job in making it then, and it's back in really good working condition, because that's what it comes down to, is the sound of the instrument, the end product. I was down at Peabody Institute of Music, and they took my violin and put it up against 8 other instruments that were dated back over 300 years. A lot of the instruments were the professor's instruments and things like that, and they did a blind test on it. They had to back to the instruments, and my instrument was a week old, and it won. Factories go under the assumption that all wood is the same, and they make them all the same thicknesses, and they make one out of a bazillion of them sounds any good. Whereas if you learn to read the wood and make corrections as you go along, you can make a great sounding instrument. I try to take my full-time apprentices sometimes to festivals, because learning to talk about it is almost, especially if you're going to make a living from it, and you need to talk to people about it. And I like to talk to people about it, so I don't do too many festivals anymore, but what I've been doing right now is tours of my shop, and that's been very helpful. It's been kind of fun, because people are very interested in things that are still handmade, and they've been coming from all over the United States, and it's kind of interesting. And I do deal with two 7th generation wood growing families. It's been in their family for almost 200 years. So they have wood dating back, 100 years if you really would like that old of wood. And then I had a chance to buy quite a few tops Italian spruce that's been air drying for that long also. So it was, and that came, directly from Italy, and it's some of the best wood in the world. Stringing it up and playing it is my favorite part. After all the hard work, after all the carving, and after all the time thinking about it, and tapping it, and trying to make everything as perfect as you possibly can. The really great part is when you string it up, and because it's utile art, it's not something you just make and set down. It's something that has to look great, but it also has to sound great. And that's when I hear the sound at the final stringing up, that's my favorite part.